Well, thanks for staying with us. Clearly, there are so many issues to address in our nation at every given time. Of course, we have brought you that report of youths who wanted to protest at the Lekki toll gate at the heels of the verdict given at the Lagos Judicial Panel inquiry on the reopening of the handing over of the Lekki toll gate to its operators. Of course, the federal government has warned those planning a fresh protest at Lekki toll gate to shelve their plans. But then, just last year, at the beginning of the whole conversation, along the line of coronavirus and the shutdown, the lockdown, and all, the next thing that was necessitated was, excuse me, the issue of food security. So a good number of people, had proposed at the time that we risk food shortage in our nation because once there is a lockdown, that's it. No one is able to go to farms and no one is able to produce as much as we need to. But recently, the federal government announced its collaboration with the United Nations on tackling hunger and malnutrition affecting Nigerians with food systems dialogue. Now, what exactly does this mean and how are we supposed to be taking all of these on? We have a number of people joining us this morning. We begin with the retired director from the Federal Ministry of Agric and Rural Development and currently providing the technical support to the national convener on the implementation of the national dialogue. He is Alhaji Aziz Musibao Olumuyiwa. He joins us this morning along the line. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have with us this morning Olushola Idowu, who is National Coordinator, Nigeria Food Systems Summit Dialogue and Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Budget and National Development, as well as Fred Kafiro of Food and Agricultural Organization. He is the country representative. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning. Let me begin with you, madam. First of all, this National Food Systems, what is it about?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Is a National Food System Summit Dialogue, and it's not only happening in Nigeria, it's a global activity, and it's in response to the United Nations Secretary General call on member nations to organize food system dialogue that will enable us to chart a pathway for sustainable food system by 2030. And the uniqueness of this dialogue is the fact that it's not only just going to be participatory, but it will be all inclusive. Also, it will be bottom top. It's not only going to be top bottom approach, but bottom top approach. It will carry everybody along, assign responsibility to all actors, and it will also form a subset of our development plan and guide for budget planning and implementation. And it also form the basis for support by development planners. I've been appointed as the national convener, and my role is to ensure that I organize and coordinate the UN Food System Summit Dialogue in Nigeria. And immediately after the appointment, I brought together experts, actors, stakeholders to form a core team. And we've been working together, having so many committees and giving ourselves assignments and roles. And so the essence is that the Food System Summit that is going to take place in New York by September 2021. So it's one of the activities leading to that Food System Summit. So we are going to be organizing dialogues nationally, subnational, and even encouraging individuals to also come on board to organize independent dialogues. So that in essence is what the Food System Dialogue is all about. Thank you.
Word there for now is the first, which is food. So let me take this to our guest in Abuja, the country representative of Food and Agricultural Organization, Fred Kafiro. Well, perhaps you want to give us that global perspective and narrow it down to us here in Nigeria. How serious a problem do we have on our hands?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me on the program. And let me also thank the convener, the national convener, Madam Permanent Secretary, for the work that she is doing in coordinating this important part of the food systems dialogues and working very, very closely with the resident coordinator's office of the United Nations here in Nigeria. So you ask what are we up to? And I think it's very important, first of all, to recognize that food touches everyone, wherever you are, whoever you are. Food is the glue that brings us all together. So we are in this all together. When we talk about food systems, it combines all of us together in one way or the other, either as producers or as distributors or processors, name it, or consumers, because in this case, then we're all consumers. So food is a uniting aspect, and the importance of food at global level has been underlined as well in the Sustainable Development Goals. As you know, now we have entered the decade of action to accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's why these dialogues are very, very important to see how, being off track already on the Sustainable Development Goals, how, in fact, we can use the food systems as a catalyst to accelerate the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals globally, but also in this country as Nigeria.
Well, now that you mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals, it brings home the number one goal, which is no poverty, or is it hunger? To eradicate hunger is definitely a global challenge. And the name of your organization, Food and Agriculture, both most certainly are sine qua non. Now, in terms of a shortfall of infrastructure, talking about both continental and even national, what are the significant shortfalls that you believe that we need to tackle seriously if we are to accelerate, as you said, the challenges of food insecurity?
Thank you so much. I think the question you're raising is quite wide because, in fact, when we talk about the food systems, we are talking about a whole range of processes, of activities, of actors along an entire value chain, if you want, or a food supply chain, if you want. So there are issues at all these stages. If you talk about production, there are issues at that stage of production, including the kinds of technologies that we use for production, what kind of inputs and who supplies those inputs, and how trustworthy these inputs are. If you talk about the harvesting, there are issues around harvesting themselves. What kinds of technologies are we using to harvest? If you talk about the handling of that harvest that we have, how is that handled? And all the losses that we incur as a result of not using the right technologies or not having the right infrastructure to be able to keep what has been harvested. Now you move to another level of aggregation, of distribution. There are all those infrastructure-related matters which no one single sector, no one single actor can deal with, but where you need collectiveness of different actors, sectors, stakeholders working together. When you move to other aspects of consumption, the consumption has lots of issues that we have talked about before with regard to wastage, with regard to consumption patterns, who eats what, why, and is what they're eating healthy? And if it is not healthy, how can we then ensure that we have nutritious diets for all? So it's quite an array of issues, and I think that's the whole underpinning around these food systems dialogues, because they are also organized in such a way that we have particular pillars, which we call action tracks, which will actually deal with each of these things in detail and try to see how, therefore, we can have a more consolidated pathway that we can use and suggest as Nigeria.
Well, quite a big nation that we have on our hands, 200 million strong and more. And in a continent, well, in a sub-continent, you know, ECOWAS and the rest of them, the entire West Africa. But let me ask, and of course there are some global or national, international institutions, the AFCA program, the AFDB, and so many others, as well as your own organization. But I'll bring you, you know, we'll raise that with you in a bit. But let me go back to Madam now to ask this. Now, clearly, if I was to ask you some policy questions, you know, along the line of, okay, so what are those policies that can foster some of the work that we have done? Perhaps it's at the level of dialogue, which is, you know, what you would want to prioritize at this point. But in terms of having these dialogues, who should we be talking to? You would agree with me that we have quite a threat on our hands. On the one hand, cattle rustlers, which has been on for quite a while. Then we have, you know, farmer-herder clashes. Now we have also talked over the years about the deficiency of rural infrastructure. We have talked about the need for collaboration among several agencies at several strata of several, you know, governmental, you know, apparatus that we have on our hands. In terms of having these conversations nationally, and let's even begin nationally, we'll talk about the international element shortly. But in terms of having these conversations, these dialogues nationally, who are the critical stakeholders that must be involved, and what are the things on the table for them?
Thank you so much. Like I said, the dialogue will be happening nationally first, then we step down to subnational. Nationally, we're looking at all stakeholders, the government, the actors, when it comes to the issue of food system chain. We're also looking at the ordinary Nigerian. It's something that will be all-inclusive and all-encompassing. We are going to ensure that everyone that needs to be at the food summit will be there. And all we are trying to do is to ensure that we are able to harness information to help Nigeria to chart a pathway for sustainable food system.
Well, there are some, yes, there are some structures of government that are already playing a role or the other. You, of course, would reference the CBN's Anchor Borrowers Program, the Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, the National Livestock Transformation Plan, the National Economic Sustainability Plan. All of these, you know, are already in place. What's the plan to unify? Are we to look forward to some national policy that unifies all of these programs and institutions towards one single goal?
Yes, that's the idea. We're bringing in everybody. And, we're talking of dialogue now. Let's come together, let's dialogue together, and then let's be able to now bring out something that will help us to formulate the policy. The idea of why the UN Secretary General started this was there's going to be a food summit in 2021 September. But leading to that food summit, let's come together as a member state. It's happening all over. Let's come together as a member state to find solution for our own food system. And that's why the food system summit dialogue, the first one we're having, which is the inception one, is talking about food system challenges in Nigeria, where we are and how do we get to where we want to get to going forward. So we are going to be harnessing all these actors in the food system: government, private sector, youth, women, everyone. We have to come on board to ensure that we have a robust discussion. That's the whole essence. We have a robust discussion because the whole essence is, for example, the inception dialogue that is happening on the 23rd of February is going to be such that we have a lead presenter linking the 5 action tracks given by the UN, and then we have the presenters to talk about the different action plans. But the most important is the discussion group. So we're going to break out into discussion groups comprising of all these actors, because when you are registering, you must have told us, I want to belong to this action group. So by the time we finish the discussion, we'll be able to harness that information and put it forward as a country.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, madam, it's a lot of work. And I would want to harvest as much information for the viewer right now who is also listening to you as possible, so that everyone can see and know or identify a place for them in all of this conversation. But we'll do more of that after this break. Leave no one behind. That is the philosophy that is driving all of the Sustainable Development Goals. The number one is no poverty. Coming closely after that is zero hunger. Nigeria, of course, as well as several other countries of the world, is a signatory to that. Let me take this back to Mr. Kafiru. In terms of leaving no one behind, is there any role the Food and Agricultural Organization and many other international agencies can play in fostering the activities of the United Nations to ensure that we leave no one behind, especially in terms of zero hunger and no poverty? A poor man can hardly be able to afford a meal for himself. So how do we ensure, in the midst of all of the poverty that the entire world is grappling with, various nations at various levels, Nigeria no less, how do we work to ensure that we leave no one behind? I know a number of international organizations, FDI, World Bank, they are doing something to facilitate rural infrastructural development, especially roads that will connect cities to the hinterlands. What other things are there for us to do, or the interventions that global organizations can play in this to ensure that we leave no one behind?
Thank you so much. I think that's the biggest commitment that the global world made to ensure the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, where everyone benefits from all that we do as a global community. So leaving no one behind is a crucial principle for the achievement of Sustainable Development Goals. and who is left behind. I mean, there's a lot of people who have been marginalized because of circumstances, who have been deprived because of structural issues, whether they are policies or legal frameworks, or just because they live in abject poverty, because of where they are located, or because of the nature of the circumstances in which they find themselves. It's incumbent upon all of us. It's not only development institutions or organizations, but all of us, government alike, to actually pay particular attention to the structural issues that keep people into poverty. And this, of course, exacerbates the food security and access to nutritious food, if indeed they are marginalized and are not catered for. So it's a challenge for all of us, first of all, to identify these people wherever we are, and we know by virtue of our cultures, for example, there are cultural issues that in fact marginalize and deprive certain segments of society. But we also know, because of the remoteness and lack of services and infrastructure in such areas, they end up marginalized, so that we can have a comprehensive approach to development, because that way then, if they are all involved and part and parcel of the development process, we can achieve more, we can achieve better, and we can achieve it faster. So for me, the issue here is for all of us to be able to work together and really support on this deprivation. And when we talk about zero hunger, we actually are referring to a situation where people at any one time have got enough adequate and access to enough nutritious food all the time. So we are talking about food security, we are talking about nutrition, we are talking about incomes that can support other livelihood needs. And it's very important that we recognize that aspect. So in the dialogues that we're going to have, actually, all these issues are very well structured in terms of, as I said, pillars of focus, where the first pillar will actually be looking at ensuring access to safe and nutritious food. What do we need to do? It's not only one perspective that is giving their views, but it's a variety and multiplicity of stakeholders that will come together to actually discuss that kind of subject and decide, therefore, how do we move forward with regard to ensuring access to safe and nutritious food. Then we have another action track which talks about shifting to healthy consumption patterns. So all these aspects will address many of these things that, in fact, you were asking about. How then do we bring up all these people that are deprived?
I like the first, structure, or the first of the points that you mentioned, which is how do we get nutritious food to people? I think the answer is simple: getting from the farm to the table. Sounds simple, right? But you will agree with me that it's a very, very complex journey. Let me ask Alhaji Olumuyiwa about that one. Alhaji, you retired from the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. So the rural development part of it is what I would want to take you up on. How significant a challenge do we have on our hands in terms of the rural development gap in order to speed up or fast track the journey from farm to table?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And I also want to quickly thank the convener of the program. That is the Permanent Secretary in the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. And I'm very excited that we are hearing this to bring it to the attention of the Nigerians, the food system dialogue, which we are planning to implement. First, let me quickly go into the question, then I will now quickly round it up with some other issues which we raised before. First, I want to say, when you look at the master plan for the implementation of the provision of rural infrastructure in Nigeria, we are needing up to trillions of dollars. The implication is that when you look at the current budget of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, because I was once the director of rural development in the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, when you look at the current budget, you will discover that the current budget of 30-something billion may not even be enough to do 2 local governments in a particular state. To be able to do this, in addition to the fact that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development is currently building roads, constructing bridges, making sure that we have rural infrastructure like rural light, rural powers. The Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development is trying to adopt a strategy that we make sure that rural infrastructure is dedicated in area whereby we have staple crop.
I hope we can get him back because that's a very, very critical element of all of the conversations we are having, and I hope really that we can get Alhaji back. But let me go back to Madam now. So, well, you talked the other time about the need for us to have dialogues across board, beginning with the national level. But then the challenge has not always been that of the dialogue or the resolutions that we have, Madam Idowu. The challenge is usually that of policy implementation. But we'll come to the implementation part, because I know that Mr. Olumiwa is working with you in the providing some technical support in terms of the implementation of the dialogue. But then in terms of the subnational conversations, who are the people, critical elements that we're supposed to be talking to, and has the initial conversations begun? Because you know that we have farmer-herder clashes on our hands, and these are critical elements in the entire conversation. You know, most of the people that will execute, that will be part of the execution of the recommendations that you make at the various dialogue levels are going to be in the farms, in the companies, in the factories, all ensuring that the systems that you put in place are not just they do not just start, but they are sustainable. So, in terms of subnationals, who are the people that we are supposed to be talking with? Has the conversations started, and how are we ensuring that we carry them along to ensure that they know that there is something in it for them?
Okay. Thank you once again. The UN actually recommended 3 levels of dialogue for member states, starting with the inception dialogue. That is what is happening on the 23rd of February. Then we step down to what we call discovery dialogue, something that will ensure that we are able to harness information from the subnational. And doing that, we're going for regional dialogue, we're going for state dialogue, we're going for city dialogue. So we're looking at everyone within the subnational, because we are trying to ensure that everyone matters when it comes to this dialogue. We are trying to ensure that the ordinary farmer, the people in the factory, the state actors, the stakeholders within the subnational, everyone should be involved. And what we are trying to do, like I said, is that we are going to have papers presented, but more importantly, in most of the dialogues, we are going to be breaking into groups, and people will now have a kind of discussion, a dialogue that will be announced later. There will be a facilitator in each group to ensure that whatever is discussed within a group is harnessed together for the national pathway for sustainable food system. So let me say this, that when it comes to the implementation, I don't think there should be any problem, because like I said, it's not only happening in Nigeria at this time, it's happening globally. And it's a matter of Nigeria bringing forward what we are able to harness from our dialogue. Other countries also doing that. And at the summit, I believe that we'll be able to learn from one another and then bring it back home. And so government will be able to now put forward policies that are implementable. For instance, as a nation, we are trying to develop the new medium-term national plan. That's the successor to the ERGP that lapsed in December 2020. And whatever we are trying to get out of this dialogue, we also form part of that medium-term national plan. And one key thing I know as the Permanent Secretary, Budgets and National Planning is the fact that implementation of whatever plan we are trying to bring together is key. We want to make sure that we implement it, and we also want to make sure that we monitor and evaluate whatever we are doing. So with all that in place, I'm sure we'll get it right if you think we have not been able to get it right before now. Thank you.
All right, let me see if we have Alhaji Olumuyiwa back in the conversation now. If you're with us, you want to continue, what we're talking about, because you talked about that gap of trillions of dollars to bridge the rural infrastructure gap that we have on our hands. That is a significant challenge and a clear setback to whatever progress we intend to make with this dialogue, wouldn't you say? Alhaji Olumuyiwa, that's for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to say that, like you have said, and as I was talking before, and I was saying before, government is trying to implement this special agro-industrial processing zone, whereby you have the producers, the processors, the aggregators, the marketers at the same time. The rural infrastructure will be dedicated in this same area, whereby the producers will have the opportunity, they won't have to travel for a long time, and before getting to the off-takers, that is the anchor investors. To these, several companies, several industries have indicated interest to participate in this special agro-industrial processing zone. With this, we will be able to dedicate the rural infrastructure in areas whereby it will be needed. Like, for example, the Kadawa valleys, where they are producing in Kano, where they are producing a lot of tomatoes. Rural infrastructure that will support the processor in that area, the producers in that area, the farmers in that area. And coming back to your question, when you look at this, the uniqueness of this food summit is that it's going to bring everybody together. That is the farmers, the commodity aggregators, the processors, the regulators, the marketers, the consumers, the logistics service provider, the agricultural and food packaging industry, the food importers, exporters, the sanitation experts, the social and economic impact evaluators, the agricultural journalists, including you, the consumers, the banks, the DOAs, the MDAs, all of them will be able together to come and design something that will be familiar, that will bring them together. And this will be implemented accordingly. You may wonder, and this is the main reason why I'm thinking in the wisdom of government, the PAMSEC in the budget office has been made the convener to be able to see everything holistically, make provisions for them. Ensure that this is in our development plan and ensure that this is well monitored and ensure that we follow it up. And this is why the permanent secretary is calling on everybody to go, the convener, to go into the website of the Federal Ministry of Budget and National Planning, go into the website of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, log in and be part of these laudable events, make contribution, including journalists, including you, make contribution because of the importance of food. The doctor will even say, take your drug after food. This explains why food is very, very, very important. Thank you very much.
Well, Alhaji, there are so many things that I would have so much love to raise with you. For instance, the federal government has said that the livestock industry alone in Nigeria is worth 30 trillion naira. Livestock alone.
Yes.
Not the entire,
yes.
Food value chain in Nigeria. That is suggesting in a way that it's a huge economic potential for Nigeria. It's a huge employment market for our teeming populace who are job searching, and it's an amazing opportunity for small and medium enterprises to thrive. Would have loved to ask questions, and I hope that those dialogues are going to happen along those lines. But we have to thank you very much.
Let me quickly address that.
You have only 30 seconds, if you don't mind.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me quickly address that. The president of the African Development, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, is fond of saying that if anybody in Nigerians today wants to be a millionaire, the best sector to belong to is agriculture. Take, for example, Africa alone will be needing in the next 5 years food worth $10 billion. And also, once you can go into agriculture, not only talking in terms of livestock, you go into all value chains. Once you can go there, you will be smiling to the banks. Those who are doing agriculture now, those who are in production, those who are in livestock production, those who are in everything, they are currently smiling to the bank.
Yeah, what one will wait for, Alhaji, then would be what policies are there, how friendly the business environment will be. Let's hope that this National Food Systems Summit Dialogue will be able to make it all appealing to investors to go, since you said that there are a number of people that are going to be there. Well, we have to thank you very much. Alhaji Aziz Musba Olumuyiwa is retired director at the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. We've also had Mrs. Olushola Idowu, who is National Coordinator, Nigeria Food Systems Summit Dialogue, and Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Budget and National Planning. It's been wonderful to find out what's the budget consideration for that, as well as the country representative of Food and Agricultural Organization, Fred Kafiro. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for your time and thought, and we wish you all the best. But back in a moment, take on the next issue. Stay with us.